and it just loses all that value. And I've got a kitten stuck in my nether regions. Kitten. Okay, I'm going to try carry on filming regardless. You going to help me? Yeah? Okay, so the next one is phones. So I'm filming this on my phone, which I think is a Samsung S10 Plus. Hi, I'm James from James Does Things, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about starting the Total Money Makeover. In my previous video I spoke about closing my business after reading this book. Granted, it wasn't actually working very well. And in this video I want to talk about baby step 1, which is where I'm on now, and what I've been doing and what I'm going to be doing. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so for those of you who haven't come across Dave Ramsey and his Total Money Makeover system before, I'll just give you a brief overview. Essentially, there are 7 baby steps in total to the system. The first 3 are the main ones that I'm going to be preoccupied with for the foreseeable future, and they are that you grow yourself a £1,000 or $1,000 emergency fund to take care of little emergencies, things like flat tires, that kind of thing. And then once you've done that, you then start to pay off your debts. You list them in order from smallest to largest, and then you attack the smallest one, and then you, instead of just going, oh yeah, I've done the smallest one, you kind of get the money that you were paying towards the smallest one, you pay to the next one as well, on top of the minimum payment for that one, and so on and so forth. So by the time you get to the last debt, you're paying with really quite a lot of money every month. So they call it the debt snowball. And then the third step is that you use the same process, kind of whatever money you were paying your debts off with, you use that to rack yourself up kind of 3 to 6 months living expenses, which is kind of like the big emergency rainy day fund for, you know, if you get laid off from work, that kind of thing. So that essentially you can live without working for 3 to 6 months. At least that's the idea. So that's the plan, and essentially you there are a few ways of getting to that depending on your circumstances. So how you actually go about getting rid of those debts, growing this fund, is kind of up to you. But the first thing Dave says is sell everything. So that's what I want to talk about today. So baby step 1 is essentially get yourself £1,000 rainy day fund in a savings account. So it's not, a credit allowance on a credit card or an overdraft. It's actual money in a savings account. So Dave gives a few examples of how you can achieve it. So he's in the system, he says things like, if you've got some savings, just take £1,000 or dollars out of there and put that in your savings. If you don't, then you need to start selling things. So that's what I've started doing. I'm going to do, rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to sell this, this and this, because essentially I'm going to be selling everything on the shelves behind me, more or less. So instead of just going, oh, I'm going to sell this, what I want to do is make another video later and show you what I sold and how much I sold it for. I did think about using, because I do have an overdraft and I do have quite a lot of spare credit capacity on my credit cards, but I think that kind of defeats the object, really. I think the whole point of this thing is, I said, it shouldn't take more than a month, and you've got to go with, I think they call it gazelle-like intensity. So you've got to pretend you're a gazelle being chased by the debt lion, and you've just got to work really hard. You shouldn't be kind of sitting around watching films and enjoying yourself. You're supposed to be, every spare minute is supposed to be selling things or working an extra job, that kind of thing. So so personally I don't have the £1,000 lying around, but I think I do have £1,000 worth of stuff lying around on the shelves behind me. So that's my plan, and that's what I want to do another video about separately. The bit they don't talk as much about, they do talk in this book, they do talk about budgeting and giving every dollar a job, essentially. So they call it being intentional with money, which I think is a really good way of thinking about it. But what they don't talk about so much is kind of there's 2 aspects to it. There's listing your debts, but there's also listing your monthly outgoings, and it's really powerful if you sit down and do that. For me personally anyway, that was a hugely powerful thing of seeing exactly what's there and exactly what's coming in and what's going out, because unless you are intentional with it, then if you are intentional with it, then the chances are you probably wouldn't need this book or this system. So for me personally, it was a big thing to see, oh, I see, right, this is what I'm going to do. So that was a really powerful thing for me, to see what was, 1, see what debts there were, and 2, to see exactly what was coming in and going out. So if if you haven't done it, do it. There's kind of a quick way and a slow way. I've kind of done both. The slow way is you go through your bank statements. You can do it on your phone quite easily with most banks. Feeling that you can do it the old school way with PDFs and maybe even paper bank statements. But the fast way is I use an app called Snoop. I might put a link in the description if I remember. But I installed that a few months ago, but it told me basically everything I'd spent for the last couple of years. So and then you can actually break things down in the app and say, well, this is groceries and this is frivolous spending and this is this is transport or whatever, things like that. So you can break it all down in the app, and then it'll say, oh, you've spent money on eating out, you shouldn't have done that. But anyway, the downside of that app is that it does actually throw lots of kind of credits and loans, and it tries to make money from you basically by giving you links to get more debt, which isn't great. But it's invaluable in terms of showing you where you're going, and I actually check it every day. I find that it's a really useful app, so I will put a link to it. So yeah, but having that being armed with that information, you can then start to cut back, because that's the next part that Dave talks about, and is cutting back. So cutting back. Now, cutting back is, I would say, half the battle of this kind of total money makeover system. There's cutting back on your outgoings, but then there's also increasing your income, which I'll talk about later on. The cutting back, there's quite a few things that they talk about in the book, and there's things, some of it is quite insightful. It's not necessarily the things I would have thought of. Some of them are really obvious. So things like the kind of what I'd call frivolous spending, things like vice. So takeaway food instead of like home cooked food, alcohol, any other kind of sort of vice stuff, bad food, things that you shouldn't have. I think it means something different to everyone. So for some people, maybe like, I don't drink coffee, but if you have a takeaway coffee on the way to work, that might actually be a big deal for you and worth the money, let's say, rather than it might not be viable to take it in to work, something like that. So it means different things to everyone. It's not sort of set in stone. But for me personally, I know the things that I shouldn't do. Gambling is another one. So I played a lottery. If you actually analyze it as a thing, it is the biggest waste of money. It's completely pointless. So stuff like that. So if you've got any vices, any things, then that's like the first one to do. The next one is subscriptions. So when I went through my sort of list of outgoings, at one point I think we had 4 different TV subscriptions. We had like Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus, and another foreign language one. So we cut down on those. I mean, I do actually really like Netflix, and I do kind of miss it sometimes because it's just so convenient. But there are free options. Like here in the UK, we've got the BBC, and there's loads of good stuff on there. And there's another 2 or 3 channels of free stuff, at least, that I know without looking. But I think the point in the book is that, okay, yeah, you are allowed to unwind sometimes, but the idea is you shouldn't really be sat there binging serials and series and films and stuff like that when you've got this kind of emergency looming over you, or a financial emergency. So yeah, stuff like that. You know what you use and what you don't use. So just have a look at that kind of stuff. The next one on the list was cars. Now, lots of the examples obviously, Dave Ramsey is based in America, somewhere in the South. I think in America there's a bigger culture of buying cars with car loans and things like that. I mean, there's a pretty big culture of it here, but I think there it's more so, it's kind of people are actually judged on how big their car payment is and stuff like that. So I don't have a new car, but I think it's about 6 or 7 years old. I thought I'd done okay with our car. Like, it does cost probably more money than it should, but it's small, it's cheap to run. It's probably lost a lot of its value. Like, if you imagine like the curve of, like when a car's fresh out of the car dealership, it's got, it's worth everything, and then literally you drive out the door and it just loses all that value. And I've got a kitten stuck to my nether regions. Kitten. So when your car's brand new, it's worth, let's say if it's worth 50 grand, and literally you drive it out the door of the dealership and it's worth like 40, maybe less, and then over the first 2 or 3 years the value plummets. But I think where I bought this one at, it was low mileage, that kind of thing, so I think it was just right in terms of minimal maintenance but still having some value and being okay. It's probably smaller than we want and nicer than we need, so I may yet sell it. I'm not emotionally attached to it like I have been some other cars in my life, or some Kittens, but it's still, I'd be worried. This is the first car I've ever bought with borrowed money. The 3 cars before it I bought for cash, but they were old. They were all between, I would say, 12 and 15 years old when I bought them, and certainly some of them were great, and one of them I was really attached to, but they used to cost me a fortune. I had 2 old Lexuses and an old Chrysler, and every time, like here, I don't know how it is wherever you live, but here in the UK, once a year you have to take your car to be checked, and if it's deemed unroadworthy, it can cost you a fortune. Can literally be every time you take it once a year, that's it. You've got to give it back. You've got to not give it back. You've got to scrap it, or spend. Sometimes you've got to spend more than the car's value getting it fixed. So, if you really like it, which we have done, and that cost us dearly. So it's not an easy one. Certainly for me, it's not an easy decision. So it's something I need to do the maths on, and I may yet do it. But I think for some people it is a case of, okay, I shouldn't have bought that car. Whereas for some people it is just a case of, actually no, I'm not going to do better than this, or I'm not going to be. My worry is, I suppose, I would buy another older car, and then it would cost me a fortune. I'd start eating into my emergency fund, within a year or 6 months. Okay, I'm going to try and carry on filming regardless. You going to help me? Yeah. Okay, so the next one is phones. So I'm filming this on my phone, which I think is a Samsung S10 Plus. Once upon a time I always had contract phones, and then I think I bought this one for £400, something like that, and it was a steal. It's I think once upon a time, if you had a phone certainly for 2 years, by the time you were ready to upgrade, the latest phone would be a world away from the phone you currently had. But now, if you look at, say, I think currently they're on the iPhone 14, and I think the new iPhone, we're in June now, the new iPhone, whatever year it is, comes out usually in July. If you look at the specs, if you compare the specs between an iPhone 12 and an iPhone 13 or 14, there's almost nothing in it, but they're, even though they're 2 years apart. So there's less and less reason, I would say, to go on to getting a contract. I'm on SIM only. I do actually need to change, because the other thing is, if you stay with a company on a contract, they'll generally just squeeze it up, certainly after the contract runs out. So I'm probably paying double what I need to. I mean, I'm not paying very much by phone contract standards, but given that it's a SIM only, I'm probably paying double what I need to. So that is something I need to change. But it's certainly for some people, like I've met people who, okay, they have a job, but they're like minimum wage job, and they're paying like £70-80 a month for the latest Samsung or the latest iPhone. So yeah, if that's you, then consider, or if particularly when you come to upgrade, don't do it. Just stick with the phone. That's certainly the lesson I've learned. Okay, utility bills is another one. I think this varies massively depending on where you live. Here in the UK, most people use gas and electricity, and it's mains. It's just delivered straight to the house, and you can choose from lots of companies. And usually, whoever the cheapest is in a given year will go bankrupt that year. That's what's been happening for the last few years. But say, for instance, things like water, there is a water supplier for your area, and that's it. You don't get to choose. So there's a company who I discovered earlier this year called Utilities Warehouse, which is a UK-based based company. They don't really advertise in the traditional way. They have they just, instead of spending money on marketing, they have like a pyramid. I don't want to call it a pyramid scheme. It's a multi-level marketing scheme. So they have teams of people some people do say it's like a pyramid scheme, but essentially they have teams of reps who try and recruit new members to the company through word of mouth and through kind of other means of advertising, through social media and things like that. So they sort of do it in two ways. They operate by not having any marketing budget at all, really, except for these reps who are on commission, and it is like only commission they're on. And then the other way to do it is by they kind of do stuff in bulk. So essentially, when I signed up, I think I was discouraged from getting just gas and electricity. They wanted gas, electricity, broadband, home insurance, life insurance, so that essentially the more products you buy with them, the cheaper it gets. So potentially that's going to make a massive saving for me. I have already looked into it. The only downside was that because the utility company I'm with are so sneaky, they've let me accrue a big debt, and now they're like, no, you can't leave, we're blocking it unless you give us a huge amount of money right now. So that's a hit I'm gonna have to take. I think I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that, but I will probably do a video about Utilities Warehouse, and just because it's one of those, it almost seems too good to be true. And lots of utilities companies get you in with a low offer, and then they rack it up and say, oh, you've used a lot of electricity, so we're gonna have to bump your the current supplier I'm with up to my monthly direct debit by £100 last month, which is a lot of money really, for as in on top. Some people's, it's not that long ago that my bill for a month was only £100, and now they just added that on top of what was already there, which was already considerable. So it's a horrible situation at the moment. So and I think lots of other people are feeling that squeeze as well. So yeah, that one, it almost deserves a video in its own right, because it's such a contentious issue. But wherever you live in the world, you might have options as well, and certainly shopping around and getting a deal. Some people will give you offers as well, if you offers to switch company, so it's well worth looking into. Another one to look at is things like insurance, and so the main ones, I suppose, are there's house insurance, car insurance, and then also life insurance, which is a bit different. Generally, so here in the UK, life insurance is for like if you have a mortgage, you have to have life insurance usually, and if you have a car, you have to have car insurance, which I know isn't the case in lots of countries. And then for home insurance, it's just kind of a no-brainer really, like buildings and contents. It's about £30 a month, and literally if the whole place burns down, touch wood, I shouldn't even have said that out loud, excuse me, with all these lights in here. If anything happens, touch wood, then we're covered. So but companies know that once you've signed up with a company, statistically you won't leave, and you'll stay for years and years and years. So they always bump the prices up. And like with car insurance, because my car is little and it's got a small engine, I got insured for something like £35 a month, which was pretty cheap. It's the cheapest insurance I've had for years. And then when we put my wife on it, because she's a learner, it doubled. But then when she said, okay, I'm not going to learn now, I'll learn again in a couple of years. So I took her off the insurance, but they said, okay, we'll take a bit off, but they only took it off to like £50. So there's this kind of missing £15 that they ought to have given me every month that they've not done. They're just like, well, yeah, it's £50, that's it, we'll give you a bit of a discount. So they're absolute scumbags, and it is just, that's why, like Warren Buffett, his first, he bought I think it was like a fabric company that made shirts that wasn't making any money, and he turned it into an insurance company because he knew it's an absolute goldmine. So because they know they can just ratchet the price up every year, chances are most people will never actually claim or anything, and yeah, it's just a license to print money. So again, that's something else I'm going to be shopping around on. I may take a utility warehouse deal if it works. I'm gonna, like I said, I need to do a video on that really, but definitely shop around for all those things. So the last one I want to talk about in terms of the actual, before we get on to how to make more money for baby step 1, the last way of sort of cutting back is the actual debt itself, because obviously there's different kinds of debt. You've got credit cards, you've got loans, things like that. Some loans are fixed, have a fixed interest rate, but some don't, and also credit cards have horrible interest rates. So Dave, in this system, Dave says you should arrange them smallest to largest regardless of the interest rate, and then just kind of batter them consistently every month with everything you can, which is sound. And he argues against the kind of arranging them in, he argues against refinancing them, consolidating them, or arranging them in interest-free, or lowest interest rate last, highest interest rate first, on the grounds that it's not a maths problem, it's a behaviour problem, which does make a lot of sense. However, he says, well, most people get out of the debt in something like 18 months, that's the average. But if you've got a lot of debt and some of it's on credit card, it's going to be, there's a bit of me wants to just do it exactly to the letter and do what he says, but there's a little bit of me that thinks, surely there's got to be a better way. Surely I could just do one balance transfer, or one, get it onto something lower. But I think the argument is that if you do a balance transfer, that's because you usually have to open another credit card for that. So it's kind of, that's an extra line of credit you've got, and they're counting on you. Their whole business model is, well, nobody gets a credit card assuming they're not going to pay off the balance every month, but millions of people forget to pay the balance or don't pay the balance off every month. So I think his argument is a sound one. I think the jury's still out on what I'm actually going to do. I think for the majority of the debt, I will just leave it where it is and do what he says. But there's one or two bits on the credit card where I'm just tempted to have a little play, try and move it or do something. But I'll see. I might well do what he says and just stick to the plan. So then the next thing to do is how to make money. So that's what we'll get onto now. So how to make more money. In the book, Dave says you get a job, get an extra job, get a better job, get promoted, that kind of thing. I work from home and I've got quite a well-paid job, so I don't really fancy getting like a pizza job, like pizza delivery job, something like that. I fancy, because basically the whole reason I made this channel is because I'm obsessed with internet stuff, making money online and that kind of thing. So it'd be kind of strange of me to not at least give that a try, especially I've just sort of had a big go at one kind of e-commerce. So and I'm going to do a bit more homework on my side hustles, because obviously the last one didn't go completely according to plan. I don't really see this channel as a side hustle as such. I know it could be, but I wanted this channel to be kind of showing my journey of how I made money doing something else. I really don't like the whole, like, you see millions of these YouTubers who are just like, oh yeah, here's like 5 ideas you can make $1,000 a day, but they're not actually doing any of them, and they've never tried any of them, or maybe they've tried one of them, but it's very few of them actually do that stuff. And I didn't want to be these, one of those kind of people who are like, yeah, here's this, just use this app and you'll get 180 pounds a minute or something. It's it's all rubbish. So I'm going to do another video about side hustles, about the things, because I have tried a lot of them over the years. So I'm going to do a video about that. If you've got any ideas about side hustles, things you tried, things you don't like, and if you've got any views on anything we've talked about in this video, please leave me a comment and consider subscribing, and please hit the like button as well, because Google loves it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.